Hello. Today I want to speak with you briefly about the necessity of negotiating distances when reading and interpreting the Bible. Anytime a document is being read which was originally intended for a different group of people, some distances will have to be negotiated in order to understand what it means. For example, the Constitution of the United States was originally written in the 18th century. Now, the world was a very different place in the 18th century. However, most believe that the Constitution still has relevance for today. So how do we get from there to here? Take the Second Amendment, for example. It says simply, and I quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed," end quote. Now, what does that mean? Well, the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence will tell you what it means, and the National Rifle Association will tell you what it means. Note that they are both reading the exact same words, but they disagree radically over what those words mean. What was apparently obvious in the 18th century when this amendment was written is no longer obvious today. Some distance between there and here needs to be negotiated. Now, if that's true of a document 200 years old, how much more true is that of a document 2,000 years old? If we're going to understand the Bible today, we're going to have to negotiate some distances to get from there to here. Distances of time, culture, geography, and even language. Take the distance of time, for example. Biblical people had never heard of computers or space travel. To ignore this simple fact leads to interpretive distortion, if not outright biblical abuse. Or take the distance of culture. Acts refers to a Sabbath day's journey. Luke says that the Mount of Olives was a Sabbath day's journey from Jerusalem. Now, that phrase is absolutely meaningless to the non-Jew, who is, of course, the typical modern Christian interpreter. But to the Jew, which virtually all the first Christians were, the phrase made perfect sense. It was the distance one could travel on the Sabbath without violating the commandment. Or take the distance of geography. The New Testament is so situation-specific that some biblical passages make no sense apart from the particular geography assumed in the passage. For example, in Mark, Jesus says to his disciples, "Have faith in God. Amen, I say to you that whoever should say to this mountain, be taken up and cast into the sea, but should not doubt in his heart, but should believe that what he says should happen, it will be done for him." Mark 11:22 and 23. Now, the commentators speculate about why Jesus should have used the image of moving mountains and casting them into the sea in order to illustrate the capacity of faith. Why would anyone want to throw a mountain into the sea, they ask. Was it just Oriental hyperbole? No, it wasn't. Remember, according to Mark, Jesus said this on his way from Bethany to the temple in Jerusalem. The path still walked today by Palm Sunday pilgrims takes you over the Mount of Olives, at the summit of which, on a clear day, you can see both the Herodian to the south and the Dead Sea to the east, with the Temple Mount lying off to the west, directly across the Kidron Valley from you. Now, the Herodian was the tomb of Herod the Great, which Herod had built by excavating one mountain and using the excavated material to build another, his Herodian. At the time, it was regarded as such a feat of engineering that it was said of Herod that he could literally move mountains. And so Jesus, standing on the Mount of Olives, looking at Herod's mountain in the south, uses it as an on-site object lesson and says in effect to his disciples, "You think that's great? That's nothing. Why, if you have faith in God, you can say to Herod's mountain, pointing south to the Herodian, be taken up and cast into the sea, pointing east to the Dead Sea, and it will be as you've said." Standing in that place and only in that place does Jesus' seemingly nonsensical statement suddenly make perfect sense. For more on this and other examples of how geography is important in interpreting the New Testament, see my book, Where Jesus Walked, A Spiritual Journey Through the Holy Land, published by Judson Press. Or take the distance of language. Some things make perfect sense in Greek or Hebrew, but when translated into English become nonsensical. For example, Paul in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, verse 15, as the King James Version translates Paul's Greek, says, "We which are alive and remain unto the coming of the Lord shall not prevent them which are asleep." Now, in the early 17th century, when the King James Version was translated, the word prevent, deriving from the Latin, literally meant go before. However, in today's English, prevent means to hinder or to stop or to impede, not at all what Paul's Greek, phthasomon, meant. Paul's Greek word means to go before or to precede. We shall not precede them who are asleep, is what Paul wrote. Indeed, if you're going to read Paul, you're going to have to read Paul in Greek, or else you're going to have to trust someone who can, because Paul did not write in English. He wrote in Greek. A simple fact. All of these distances are formidable and can, if not properly negotiated, materially affect what one finds in the text. And so be aware when interpreting the Bible that there are distances that must be negotiated if you are going to rightly divide the word of truth. I hope that helps. Till next time, take care. God bless.